Hello, I'm Rona Rutchik, and this is Art Talk, a series of conversations about art. In this segment, the art world, the people and their politics, I would like to show you and talk to you about curiosities and questions that you, the audience, might have about the art world. We'll focus on really the life of an art piece as it leaves the artist's studio and travels perhaps to a gallery dealer, a curator in a museum, a media critic, perhaps an academic critic, and a collector, a buyer, and the general looking audience, and see what kind of a world in the background an art piece really has to go through. These are the kinds of questions and the kinds of things an audience likes to know about art and can help an audience know more about art and the artists that produced the art. Audiences are getting more and more large and more everyday-like, and that's because art is everywhere. No longer is art in the aristocratic world of yesteryear, but now art is in our everyday worlds, in our packaging designs in the supermarkets, in our clothing designs and ads in newspapers, on packages of every different kind, in our homes, in our stores, and very much in our galleries and museums. And because the people are so interested in art, in education, and because art discloses so much of our human condition, art connects us, and art has a very large audience. How does art connect us to ourselves, our personal feelings? Well, there are very many ways that art visualizes for us expressions and feelings that we sometimes find difficult to verbalize. I'd like you to meet my guest, artist Mary Burt, and today we're going to focus on the kind of inspirational art that Mary does so beautifully. Mary, thank you for coming to the studio today. We're going to take a look at some of the art that you do, both as a fine arts gallery artist and as a teacher in workshops and as a commercial artist. Tell me about that.
My work is divided up in many different ways. I exhibit. I have a show coming up this month in West Hartford. I do work with greeting card companies, 3 different greeting card companies, and a book publisher. And I have an original card line that is in 30 different retail shops in New England, and I do a lot of workshops and teaching, sharing how I've used art to help me grow and heal as a person.
We've called this program today Art of Inspirational Art and the Spirit of a Brushstroke. And in fact, Mary, I see that the book that you have written is called The Spirit of a Brushstroke. Tell me a little bit about this inspiration for your art that you have, the spirit with which you paint.
I paint what I feel many times has no words. There doesn't seem to be words, and I just have this need to create and express and make tangible what is inside me. And one of the mediums that best helps me do that is watercolors. I've done artwork all my life, and I've used a lot of different mediums, but 10 years ago, I picked up watercolors, and there was a tremendous freedom and a tremendous letting go with watercolors. And I find with my art that lots of times I can talk about an experience after I have expressed it visually. Sometimes I really don't know the words to tell you what I'm feeling, or I can't process the experience verbally. One of those experiences that I could share with you is 2 years ago I had cancer and I had a mastectomy. I took my paints to the hospital with me just instinctively, knowing that I might need them. I wasn't able to cry after my surgery for a few days until I started painting. And at first I did a couple of paintings that pleased people around me, and then I got off by myself and I did a whole group of paintings, and I did them very spontaneously. Perhaps I could show
Sure.
you
Let's
a
take a
few
look.
of them. And I did 14 paintings very spontaneously. I didn't think about what I was doing. I just did them out of my need to say something, and I didn't even know what I needed to say. The first one was this painting. And I continued to paint without thinking, and I ended up, I won't show you all of them, but I ended up doing 14 paintings very, very rapidly until I got to this painting, and then I was able to cry. And this spoke of my experience that I had just had coming out of surgery. Only later, after I did that, could I talk like I'm talking now and tell you that I was very afraid. I needed to do that painting to get a sense of myself and see myself in a new way. So that painting was worth hours and hours of trying to struggle and tell somebody. And when I did that, I felt whole. I felt like I was saying and seeing myself the way that I am, the way I was.
When you were there doing that, were you purposely, did you, now that it's over, you can say to yourself that, well, this series of pictures represented thus and so, but when you took out your paints and you were distressed in this world of the hospital, did you take out your paints to paint so that you could eventually get to the picture of your body, to show yourself that this is me, I am as much me as I was then, I'm just different from what I remember myself to be last week? Or did that come about as you went through the 14 pictures?
That was a surprise to me when I got to the 14th picture and that happened. And it was like that came out of my subconscious. I had no plan or no conscious manipulation that I was going to do this. I just knew that I had some feelings that I needed to express and get them out of me. I did not know how that would be. I always feel a risk as an artist. I'm very vulnerable because I don't know what's going to come out of me.
But as an artist, you came fully equipped, so to speak, as you brought your brushes and your colors. You had in the hospital not only your feelings that you could deal with or needed to deal with, but you also had some background of shape, style, color. Did any of that play on what you were doing, or you say that you just let the watercolor go and that it frees you? Some of what you are thinking inside, those chaotic feelings that you can't make a center out of, you can actually get a picture that starts out with a hazy body and ends up with a very specific look to that body that tells you a fait accompli. This is it, Mary, get used to it.
The way that I approached that was I knew that what I needed to paint needed to be expressed in gray. And I used gray, and I didn't know why. I could not tell you why, and I had some odd random pieces of paper, and I just grabbed sizes as I was going that felt comfortable to me.
So you started out in blues, and you worked yourself to a gray color?
Yes.
I hadn't even noticed till you told me about the color, that was gray.
That's my entrance when I paint. I just have a sense of the color that feels right to me. And I'm drawn to that, and I'm drawn to the size brush, and I don't know why. And when I put it down on paper, I'm drawn to a certain area on the paper, and then I just start, and it just flows. It just comes out of me. The night before I left for the hospital, I had a sense, even though the whole experience was very frightening and I didn't know what was going to happen to me, on some level I really knew that I was going to be okay. And I did this flower that I left on my drawing table. Obviously, I knew I'd be returning back to my apartment. And it's a flower that's almost dancing. Later, I believe I became like that flower. I did write on the bottom of this painting, and I date things, which is very helpful. After every winter follows a spring, far beneath the winter snow lies a seed that with sun's love in the spring becomes the rose.
This painting, I would say, looking at it and not knowing, as I might not know if we didn't have this personal conversation with you, that this is a very beautiful, very bright, very optimistic, very happy picture, very inspirationally happy flower. And that day that you made this, your today, that day, that you talk about your paints flowing from you, must have been a very mixed up kind of emotional day. You were going to a place that you would not be in charge, and you would not be anything but frightened, as we all are, I'm afraid, of hospital visits, hospitalizations for sure. And preparation for surgery always brings a great deal of anguish and anxiety, and yet this picture does not look anguished, and anxiety does not seem to be written all over it. How did you find your center at a moment like this?
I'm glad you brought that up because we touched on this when we talked in my studio when I did a very peaceful painting and I had a very busy day. And that's what my art is. It touches what isn't tangible. It touches a spiritual part of me that keeps me centered. That's a life-giving part of me. And it's not an intellectual thing. And I can make order out of the chaos around me. That is the order. And quite often I will do extremely peaceful things will come out of me when all hell's breaking loose all around me. But that is my art. That is the calm part, the one calm part of me. I'm not denying the reality of the things that are going on around me. I felt a lot of fear. I think maybe a way to explain this a little better to you is prior to surgery, I did a painting of the tumor, or a colored drawing of the tumor. And it's a very beautiful color.
Yes, I don't know how much will get picked up, but hopefully this beautiful cerise, bright, spring-like color, similar to the color that you're wearing today, is a very positive color. To be thinking in terms of something that we're told is bad and it's lethal and it's got to go and it's all of the things about it is a negative concept, and yet you chose to put on this pristine white paper, rather heavy paper too you chose for this, a beautiful coloration.
And I didn't think about that color as being a courageous color, although today I believe that purple is. I just took that color because that was a warm, friendly color to me. And the tumor became friendly. I could almost hold it in my arms, and it helped me not be afraid of it. And interestingly, I showed this to the surgeon after my surgery, and he told me that was the shape of it. But I had no way of knowing that consciously or intellectually.
So this was a make-believe picture of what you perceived the tumor to be.
Correct, and it turned out...
From what you could feel and just knowing tumors, we always think of them as round.
Yeah. So I think on some level, I know things on some level, and it's not always an intellectual level. And with my art. It's not an intellectual thing. I express something that I feel inside me, and the way that I know finally intellectually is once it gets out of me.
Now, let's move from you into the idea of what you could do for me or an audience. Part of what your life is as an artist, is that you run seminars and workshops. Other people who might have something to say to themselves inside themselves and find it difficult to verbalize with, or maybe just want to find an ability, a sensitivity, a way to be in touch with themselves. Join your workshops and seminars. What can you do for them that can help them, and how does that happen?
Okay, I do a lot of different kinds of workshops. I think for me personally, my sharing connects me with people. As an artist, for many years I was isolated and there was no connection with other people. I also find that my art has become a healing thing for me also. It's therapeutic as well as doing it professionally. The final piece of my own healing is to share with other people and share my experience with them. I had, for example, a man in one of my classes where I had taught an elder hostel for a whole week, had done the original Breck shampoo ad, and came up to me after 3 days and was kind of bewildered by just the free kind of painting, and then he expressed to me later, after he kept painting in this way, that even though he was able to do things like the Breck shampoo ad and things like that for years, he'd been able to perform, but he wasn't in touch with the creative part of him. He could produce on an intellectual level, but he didn't enjoy what he was doing. Mm-hmm. He wasn't in touch with that real creative part. And then he started to paint very loosely and then went back to painting very realistically, and it all became softer. And he became softer and much more open and more relaxed. Mm-hmm. This
idea of the workshop and how it happens, we'll take a look at in a few minutes. But let's take a visit, if we can, to your studio and see how you work, what kind of a space you choose for yourself. I think it's kind of important for our viewers to see, to get a notion about what you are as a woman, as an artist. Those greeting cards on the wall, there are quite some of them, and you mentioned just earlier that you work for quite a lot of greeting card companies. How difficult was it to crack into that commercial business?
It was very difficult. 10 years ago, someone challenged me and said, either you're an artist or you're not. And after years of struggling, I decided to take 6 months and just do my art, just commit myself fully. And I lived off some savings that I had. And during that period of time, I sent out hundreds of things to different places. Out of 150 rejections, I got contracts with 3 greeting card companies and 1 book publisher that I have done drawings for 2 books that have been published by Paulus Press. So it was very difficult, and I was very determined and very persistent. And out of those 3 companies I've done work for, I ended up doing over 200 watercolors that were purchased and published into greeting cards. And now Kirsten Elliott out of Newburyport is coming out with a line called Sensitive Florals by Mary Burt, and it's a line that will have 6 floral designs that will be in cards, note cards, and stationery. And if that takes off, then I will expand on that line. But it took me a long time to really work in. And then I had surplus designs and decided to design my own original line, and I went out and I set up accounts all over New England myself. I considered having a sales rep, but I found that people like meeting the artist, and I need that connection with people. So,
and with the people, those are your commercial people, but you do many of these workshops and seminars where people come to you at various centers, and you get out the paints for them and you help them start to paint. At this visit recently to your studio and to your home, I had the opportunity of being one of your workshopees, and I'm not an artist, and I am not comfortable or being an artist with a brush. I don't do that. Let's take a look at the tape that we made that we have of me working through a kind of conversation with you and our brushes and our paints, and allow our viewers to see what happens somewhat at a workshop. Mary, show us what you might mean by the spirit of a brush stroke.
okay. When I start painting, I usually take a piece of paper that feels comfortable to me, and this is a size that feels comfortable to me. And I like using 3 containers of water. And today, right this minute, I feel drawn to this blue. It's almost a aqua blue. And this is how I start painting, and I loosen up the paint so it's like water. And I try to be like water when I'm painting. Just loose. Everything is really loose. And then I look at the paper until I feel that I'm just kind of drawn to a particular point on the paper. I feel, I'm just operating with my feelings here. I want to make a mark right here. Now I want to make another mark. I'm not worried about if I'm going to make something. Now I'm going to take a brush that just has water on it. It has no paint on it, and I'm just going to go along the side a little bit. where I painted and let it bleed a little bit. I don't work it too much, I just, a few simple strokes. Now I'm going to use a little bit of red. It's a Thale crimson red. And I'm going to loosen up the paint. And I just feel like making a little bit of red on this and where it's still wet. Again, I'm not worried about what it is. I'm going to take a paintbrush that's still, has just water on it, and I'm going to just kind of go along the edge and let it bleed some more. And let that red bleed into the blue a little bit. And I'm going to leave it alone and just let it dry, and it will form its own shape. It controls me. I don't control it. I go with it. And that's a shape that just feels nice to me this afternoon. It's just rounded and it flows, and that's the way I feel today. It's been a day where things just have flowed for me all day long. Would you like to paint, Rona? I'd like to invite you to paint if you would.
We'll keep this one over here.
Okay.
Sure. Now, many ideas are going through my head, and the first thing that I see is that you, in this piece and in many of the other pieces that I see in your studio, your lines are, your shapes are lyric as opposed to rhythmically stronger. I can think of, for instance, a mountain shape or a pointed shape, something that goes up and comes down. Is there a reason that you choose always to do this somewhat of a lyric, a balletic kind of move with your paintbrush? And if I were to react to this and say, well, I'm going to do something quite different from that, the first thing I would do different from that would be to put a shape on this paper that would be a mountain. A shape of an up and a down. Do you purposely not do rhythms like that?
I stay away from angular shapes mainly because watercolors, for me, just there's a flow. It's like water. It's like a river, and
rivers don't have those kind of corners, although sometimes they do, but they don't. You think of it as flowing more than angular.
Right. Watercolors really flow for me. Some other mediums that I might use might have sharper edges, like sometimes I do pen and ink drawings and I'll do a sharp edge. And I feel that way while I'm talking to you, but I don't with watercolors. It brings out a very loose, gentle, flowing part of me, and I become like water. And it becomes like a meditation for me. So even though once in a while something may come out a little jagged, most of the time it's just a flowing that happens. But sometimes people do sharper designs.
And is it that there is so much space on this picture telling something about how you feel today? This is, as you say, the feeling you have today, or at least now, not even today, but now, this moment.
Right.
And this is finished.
Right,
for you
right now, that's finished for me, and that speaks of me where I am today. There's a lot of space in my day today. And there was a time when I did artwork when I covered every corner of the paper. I have 5 children that are grown up, and there was a time when my life was full, all over. Every corner of my life was full. Today it's not. I live alone. I have I have space. I've had space to be alone today. I've had space with other people. And so there's a lot of space in my work. And my art doesn't lie. It really reveals where I'm at.
Was I saying something about myself for your perception in the kind of work that you do with people when I say to you there are the two things that I notice about this is that there's little on the page, that there's lots of space, and that this is very lyric and not at all angular? Does it tell you something about my life that might be different from yours? What if I had drawn that? What if I had said, well, yes, I will. Thank you for the invitation. I'll take a pen, and quite purposefully, I will react to this and do it totally differently. I'm thinking, well, she's done a nice lyric balletic thing. I'm going to do something far stronger. Whoops, shall I use a certain brush with a certain color on it? Does it matter?
You may use whatever brush you feel that feels like it's a good size for you.
Well, I grabbed the biggest one at first, but it has a blue on it, and I was going for a red, hot pink kind of color. And I was going to make something that is, let's see what happens here. I want this to be even stronger than that. I'm not happy with how that came out. I want this to be something sharper.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's purple.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's nice. Even though it's sharper, it still flows.
Mm-hmm. And what should I be thinking? I'm not at all connected to this. I don't feel any, I'm not used to responding visually with my hands, although I must tell you that I think visually a great deal. Everything that I remember, I tend to remember in Technicolor. I think I dream in Technicolor. I remember scenes of my childhood in color, my little kid pajamas, in scenes that I remember with my twin brother, probably before I learned how to read or write. I have a twin brother that I adore, and I can remember way back in our cribs. We shared a room with two cribs next to one another, and I think of it all in color. I don't know if it's right, correct, if someone were to grab the photographs of our room. So I think in color, but yet I have no connection. I've never been a painter. I've never had the need to kind of want to draw things. So how can you help me with the spirit of the brushstroke? How can I get more in touch with my feelings and do it the way you do it, process-wise?
Is there a color that you painted that you feel drawn to of these three colors, the blue, the red, the purple? Are those colors that draw you?
I like the colors. I like the purple one the best.
How did you feel when you were making those strokes?
I feel good.
Did it feel free?
This one actually felt the freest, but it was the third or fourth one I made, so I was more comfortable pressing on the paper with the brush.
Would you like to try another one and see what happens with another one?
What shall I try for?
Okay. Not to try to think about it, but just to do it, just to choose a color again and a stroke, and see if any pattern evolves for you. What did you feel when you were doing it?
Just an action. Just.
Were you thinking?
But I thought about it before I did it.
You thought about it before you did it. Is there some more that you want to do with that?
Well, if it were my project to make this into a picture, or make this into a design, I would do a lot more down here. I would start attacking this area and fill it up with vivid kind of this kind of thing. Here I'm doing it. And I guess I would do with something like this. My life is a little busier than yours, as you described yours. I'm not yet at that stage where I can think in terms of my life as being a singular direction that is me-centered yet. Although certainly there are parts of my life that are me-centered and are directed by me and taken to fruition by me. And what I don't like about this is I would have to do more to this, because right now as it sits and I look at it, and I'm sensitive and self-conscious about the fact that maybe you're going to see something about me in it. What discomforts me about it is that it looks very fancy and a little bit too unorganized. But what I like about it is that there are certain things that are in the foreground and certain things in the middle ground and certain things that are that appear and are there, but they're in the background, and that maybe there's a priority to the things that I am busy with if my life is this picture. Do I have any right to perceive any of these kind of things from what I see in this design? Is this kind of like what you're trying to teach me?
That's kind of how I work, in that sometimes I will keep a journal, just doing what you're doing, and if your life is busy and you've got busy strokes here, I think that's true to you. And sometimes I would keep painting like you're painting, and I would see some of the colors repeating themselves, colors that I liked, and I would be thinking about my life, and like I thought the purple was very beautiful here. I think about you have a very light touch, you know. I would be looking, if it were my things that I were painting, if I kept painting in a light way, if I
Quite different from this,
right, and if I kept doing things like that, I would look for changes, and while I was painting, I would be thinking about some of the things that are going on in my life.
But doesn't the fact that you're an artist, and I am not at all an artist, isn't that the first thing you see when you look at these three pieces of paper?
No, what I see when I look at these three pieces of paper, I'm looking at shapes and colors, and all three of them have some kind of peacefulness to them. There's a lightness. I don't think about being an artist academically. I think about how you put down some colors that were pleasing to you, and you talk about what you liked and what you didn't like, and in mine, I don't think of it as better or not so good. I just think about how peaceful the space is to me right now in my life, and I happen to like this one. Sometimes I don't like things that I do. I do like that one, and I like the colors, and that's how I feel today. And it's really not any more complicated than that. That really tells a story of my day today. There's not a lot of clutter in it, and those are colors that I like today. I also was excited when you painted a stroke and suddenly you got purple, and it felt like magic to me because it kind of happened.
Well, but there's a purple sitting right here in the palette of our dish. And one of the things that struck me is that you, being so much more experienced with this connection of your feelings, your body, and the art of using a brush, water, and pigment, that you could decide to add a little water and let's see, you said, I'm just going to lighten the stroke a little by adding some water. And then you said to me, well, it's interesting that I picked the colors. Well, the colors were picked for me. They're right there. It did not occur to me to start mixing a little of this with a little of that to get something different from what you've already shown me is the color scheme of the moment. So my creativity went about 1.5 inches wide, and you, from your knowledge of an artist, even if it was not consciously being worked on as an artist, I'm going to make a really lovely picture. You have at your hand tools with which you can express or be in connection better with your feelings and something that you're doing here, whereas I'm limited. I'm limited to what you gave me, 3 brushes, 3 little pots of water, and 5 little blurbs of color. You picked the color. You picked how many little things we're playing with, and I need to work within those things because I haven't yet learned that I can have 100 of them. 100 colors, 100 little pots. I could do thick. I could do, now that I think about it, I could water things down. I could take the purple and make it into a lavender if I should want to. My feelings are strong colors and strong shapes, I guess, right now. And if I were to do another one again, I would. My feeling is that I would take my hands and do something big and wide. And yet, this beautiful, calm picture, you say, depicts your day and your feelings. And when we came to meet you today in your studio, you had just come from a busy morning, standing on ladders, painting and decorating a wall in a commercial establishment that you've been hired to help decorate and design a wall for. So your life has not today been languid or soporifically sleepy. You've been creating, you've been thinking, you've been with people, you've been outdoors, you've driven from one place to another, you had an appointment to keep with some people you didn't know to create a process that you don't do every day. So I'm anxious to talk more with you about what
this is
you
the piece
think
we were
the
talking
intersection
about.
of mind and body and painting, the spirit of a brushstroke, could be for yourself, so that you can then perhaps teach me and our viewers how better to be connected with their feelings and their body and their spirit when we return back at the studio. Mary, what kind of a subject was I for you there? Was I anything like what kind of people come to you in seminar form and workshop form? Was I harder? Was I more stiff and more uneasy than most, or less?
I think that you were a little stiff, but not so unusual from a lot of people that come into the workshop. You certainly challenged me, which is really, really good, and got me to thinking about why I do some of the things that I do. I think that it would have benefited us to have had time to do a little more painting, more than 1 or 2 pieces. However, I got a sense from you that that you were sort of involved, but not quite involved. But what came out of that was really interesting. You ended up kind of almost drawing with a paintbrush, a drawing that you had done when you were young, which was a happy memory for you, and told a little story about yourself. So I think that certainly had some value and some merit. And I think sometimes when I do workshops, we do paintings throughout the course of the whole day, almost in a rhythm. We do a cluster of paintings and then take reflection time and come back and share. And more things evolve and people become more and more involved. And they play a little more and get more relaxed. We didn't have a lot of opportunity to do that.
What you just said about a story, is this a very important part of it? Is this painting, getting involved with the watercolor, a vehicle that you try to get your students to get more involved with themselves so that they can release a story verbally as well as through shapes and forms and color?
I think it just happens. I did a reflection retreat day not too many months ago in Madison, Connecticut. And there was a nun who was in that group, and she did a lot of journaling, writing, and she felt that she had hit a closed door. Those were the words she used. And I suggested to her that she just paint a closed door, and she continued to paint through the day, and she kept painting doors. And in the end of the day, after sharing and painting and reflecting, the door opened. And she didn't know what was behind the door, and it came out in her painting. And she didn't try, it just happened.
That's an interesting story, and the fact that you brought up the nun allows me to bring up, reminds me to bring up for our audience, when I visited you at your home and your studio, which is very small, and from what I read in your book that you allowed me to share with you, you take comfort in the closeness of your work area and your living area. But you grew up and you still remain a very closely secured woman involved with a personal conviction for the church. And yet, the kind of inspirational work that you do and the kind of spirit that seems to flow into your work is totally or at least to my eye, denominational and interrelated with all kinds of people, and one does not have to be related to any church whatsoever or any particular religious belief whatsoever. Your art subjects is all nature for everyone or anyone to enjoy, both to be inspired from and to get inspiration from and to inspire work with them. I know that you celebrate every day by painting, and I'd love for you to paint for us now, as I thank you for coming to visit with us, what you feel about today, your day. I'd like to show our audience this very beautiful purple nature study of a flower. I think it's just so beautiful, and it represents perhaps our time together. But you have brought your paints today, and maybe you can celebrate the day.
Okay, I would love to do that. I usually start painting today. Today I feel that this is a good size paper for me today. And we talked about the size of my studio. Ironically, I work in the same size space that I did when I was a child. I had a studio in a closet in the home I grew up in, and it wasn't any bigger than the space that I've chosen as an adult. Right now, I have no idea what I'm going to paint, but right now I want to choose some red. And first I choose the size paper. It feels comfortable to me, and now I'm choosing a color, and I really loosen up the paint a lot. And I'm just going to touch the paper like this. Then I'm going to take a brush that has no paint on it. Just wet it. I'm going to use a color, another color that I don't normally use, and I used it over Easter, a yellow. And I think that reflects a little bit about where I'm at today. On Easter, someone left me a pot of daffodils outside my door, and it was a wonderful, wonderful gesture. So I'm just going to touch this red with some yellow. And these are the shapes that feel comfortable to me. They just kind of flow like the water flows, and I feel that I'm flowing today. I'm adding a little more water. I'll go back to this brush here. I want a little more red to put into this wet, and I want to watch it bleed. Oh, that feels very beautiful to me as it's bleeding, and that still excites me. And when I was a little girl, I used to watch oil spills and puddles, and they used to bleed like this. And okay. I have taken everything in my life, all my religious upbringing, my experiences growing up on the Vermont-Canadian border, and I've gone beyond that. I go beyond religion, and it becomes spirituality to me. And I take all the experiences I've had as a person and make them new through my art.
Do people from all walks of life come to your workshops?
People from all walks of life with all kinds of issues in their life.
Both religious and non-religious people?
Both religious and non-religious people. It becomes a spiritual thing. It's not confined to just a symbol or an experience. I experience new life every day, and the way I do that is through my work. It's a way I pray, it's a way I stay close to myself, and God and other people. I feel like I want a little green in here right now. And I guess this has become a flower, although I didn't start out that way. And to me it feels very beautiful. And I feel right now that it needs more paint over here on this side.
When people paint at the workshop, do you go around and help them to do things the way an art class instructor would do, or?
No, I basically leave people alone. I demonstrate and I share my life and my experiences and my work, and then people just start painting. I demonstrate in front of them for as long as they want, and sometimes people will ask me specific things or to paint, show them again how I paint in such a loose style, but they go off and get in touch with that playfulness. I don't go around and watch unless someone specifically asks me to come over and they're having a little difficulty with something. One woman in one of the workshops was painting waves, and she was sitting and painting waves straight, and she couldn't seem to get them to roll, so I suggested that she stand up. I stood up first, and I moved my whole body, and I'll make suggestions like that to people.
But the painting and the work that your people do will not in any way be compared to other people in the workshop. You will not give particular gold stars for the best work done in any way. I don't mean that literally,
No.
but
I've had as many as 60 people in a workshop
At once?
which I had done. I did that with another a person. I did that with a person that did music a year ago, and we had 60 women that showed up for this workshop, and everybody painted, and everybody painted something different.
well, as we watch you and as we close, I want to thank you for coming, and I want to thank our audience for watching. And I hope that our work together will add to your inspiration in your work of art. And thank you for inspiring our audience so that their lives can be touched through art and the human condition that art brings. Their personal feelings will be visualized, as will other artists who do work that bring feelings onto the page. Thank you for watching. We'll see you again next week.
Thank you, Rona. Thank you for having me.